My name is Nora Bennett. Standing beneath the crystal lights of my parents' 35th anniversary gala, I watched my mother's smile collapse, my father's hands start shaking, and my sister finally understand why I had been erased from the guest list. 1 hour earlier, Brielle had whispered, "This night is only for real family." By midnight, everyone in that ballroom knew the truth. I was the only one in that family whose name had been stolen. Growing up, I always knew I was the extra chair at the table. Not unwanted enough to be thrown away, but never wanted enough to be chosen first. My parents, Martin and Evelyn Bennett, were the kind of people who measured love in public achievements. My father had spent 30 years in banking, and he spoke like every room was a board meeting. My mother collected invitations, charity plaques, and people with last names she thought mattered. In our house, reputation was not something we protected. It was something we worshipped. Then there was my younger sister, Brielle. Brielle had bright hair, bright teeth, bright grades, and a way of walking into a room that made people forget anyone else was standing there. My parents called her their miracle, their proof that all their sacrifice had meant something. By the time she was 28, she was a financial consultant with a corner office, a polished fiancé named Caleb Rhodes, and a future my mother described like a press release. And then there was me. Dark hair, quiet voice, freelance interface designer. The daughter who worked from a small apartment with secondhand furniture and a desk that wobbled when I typed too fast. My mother used to say, "Nora, you are creative, and that is sweet. But Brielle is building a real life." My father said it differently. "Your sister has direction. You have hobbies." They never screamed. That would have been easier to explain. Their cruelty came folded inside advice, wrapped in concern, served at dinner with a smile. When relatives visited, Brielle was introduced with a list of accomplishments. I was introduced with a pause. "This is Nora. She does design work." Design work. As if I drew flowers on birthday cards. For years, I told myself they did not mean to hurt me. I told myself every family had its favorite. I told myself being the understanding one was a kind of strength. But being understanding can become a trap. In some families, favoritism is not just affection. It becomes a system. One child becomes the trophy, and the other becomes the cushion. One is praised for wanting more, and the other is praised for needing less. After enough years, everyone forgets that both children were supposed to be loved, not assigned roles. I did not know that then. I only knew that if Brielle was late, there was traffic. If I was late, I was careless. If Brielle forgot something, she was overwhelmed. If I forgot something, I was unreliable. If Brielle needed money, my parents called it an investment. If I needed help, they called it a pattern. So I learned not to need. When my parents announced their 35th anniversary gala, my mother treated it like a royal event. It would be held at the Whitcomb Hotel, an old building near Lake Michigan with marble floors, brass elevators, and a ballroom that looked expensive even in photos. The gala was supposed to celebrate my parents' marriage, but it became something bigger. Brielle and Caleb would also be honored that night because Caleb's family had just invested in a charity fund my mother wanted to join. My mother called it a beautiful merging of families. I called it what it was: a stage. Still, I helped. I designed the digital invitations. I built the event page. I corrected the seating chart after my mother changed it 12 times. I found the florist when the first one canceled. I stayed up until 2 in the morning fixing a registration issue because my mother said, "Nora, you are so good with these little tech things." Little. That word followed me everywhere. 2 weeks before the gala, I realized I had not received my invitation. At first, I thought it was a mistake. I checked my email, my spam folder, even the old address I no longer used. Nothing. I called Brielle. She answered on speakerphone. I could hear dishes clinking behind her and Caleb laughing at something in the distance. "Hey," I said. "I think the gala invite got lost. Can you forward it to me?" There was a pause. Not long, but long enough. "Oh," she said. "I thought Mom talked to you." My hand tightened around the phone. "Talk to me about what?" Brielle sighed, the way people sigh when they have already decided you are the problem. "Nora, this is a very important night. Caleb's parents will be there." Dad's old clients will be there. Mom just wants everything to feel smooth. Smooth, I repeated. You know how you get when you feel left out. I almost laughed. I feel left out because I am left out. She lowered her voice. Please do not make this dramatic. The gala is really for family and close friends. I stared at my laptop screen at the event page I had built with my own hands. I am family. Another pause. Then Brielle said the sentence that changed everything. This night is only for real family. There are moments when pain stops being loud. It becomes clear. I did not yell. I did not beg. I did not ask her to explain what she meant. I just said, good to know, and ended the call. For a long time, I sat in my apartment, listening to the hum of my refrigerator and the traffic below my window. I thought I would cry. I wanted to cry. But something colder moved through me first. A question. Why had those words sounded rehearsed? Why did my mother always look nervous when people said I did not resemble my father? Why did my grandmother once start crying when I found an old silver necklace in her sewing box? Why did my birth certificate look newer than Brielle's, even though I was older? For the first time in my life, I did not ask what was wrong with me. I asked what they were hiding. 3 days later, my grandmother Ruth called. She was moving from her old townhouse into assisted living, and she asked if I could help her sort through the attic. My mother was too busy with the gala. Brielle had a client trip. My father said his back was acting up. So I went. Grandma Ruth's townhouse smelled like cedar, dust, and lemon polish. It was narrow, warm, and filled with objects that seemed older than the city itself. She had always been kinder to me than the others. Not openly protective, but softer. When my mother criticized my clothes, Grandma Ruth changed the subject. When my father ignored my birthday, she mailed a card with $20 and a pressed flower inside. That afternoon, we sorted boxes of holiday dishes, faded coats, and photographs in cracked frames. Near the back of the attic, behind a stack of old tax files, I found a walnut box wrapped in a quilt. It was locked. Grandma, I called. Do you know what this is? She turned so quickly I heard her knee pop. Her face went pale. That is nothing, she said. Leave it. I looked at the box again. Why is nothing locked? Her lips trembled. Some things are not meant to be opened by children. I am 31. Her eyes filled with tears. For a second, I thought she would take the box from me. Instead, she sat down on an old trunk and covered her mouth with both hands. The key is in the blue vase, she whispered. I found it wrapped in tissue paper. Inside the box were letters, a bank ledger, a hospital bracelet, and a silver necklace engraved with 2 tiny initials. NM. My initials were NB. My mother's maiden name was Marlowe. At first, none of it made sense. Then I saw the photograph. My mother, much younger, standing beside a man I had never seen before. He was tall, dark-haired, and smiling at her like she was the only person in the world. On the back, someone had written, Evelyn and Julian, 1993. Julian Mercer. I knew that name. Everyone in Chicago business circles knew that name. He had built a software company in the 90s, sold it, and then disappeared from the public eye after his wife died. My father once called him lucky, arrogant, and overpraised. There were letters from Julian to my mother. Not many, but enough. He had loved her. He had known she was pregnant. And then one letter, written in my mother's handwriting, made my chest go cold. Julian, I made the decision. There is no baby. Please do not contact me again. I read it 4 times. There is no baby. My grandmother was crying now. I wanted to tell you, she said. Then why didn't you? She looked smaller than I had ever seen her. Because your mother said Martin would leave. Because she said the family would be ruined. Because she said Julian had moved on. And because I was a coward. The truth rarely arrives like thunder. Sometimes it sits in a dusty box, waiting for the day your hands are steady enough to open it. I took the box home. That night, I spread everything across my kitchen table. The bank ledger showed deposits made under the name Nora Marlowe. There were copies of trust documents, insurance paperwork, a letter from my maternal grandfather setting aside money for me before he died. Not for Brielle. Not for my parents. For me. The next morning, I ordered a private DNA test. Then I found an email address for Julian Mercer's legal office and sent one message. My name is Nora Bennett. I believe you may have known my mother, Evelyn Marlowe, in 1993. I have documents I think you need to see. I expected no answer. He replied 6 hours later. We met 2 days later in a quiet conference room downtown. Julian Mercer was older than the man in the photograph, but the resemblance hit me before he even spoke. Same dark hair, now streaked with gray. Same green eyes. Same way of tilting his head when he was trying not to react too quickly. He looked at me like he was seeing a ghost who had learned to breathe. I was told there was no child, he said. His voice broke on the last word. I pushed the letters across the table. He read them slowly. When he reached the one from my mother, he closed his eyes. I sent money, he said. Not at first. She refused contact. But years later, her attorney reached out. They said there had been medical expenses connected to the pregnancy. Then education costs. He swallowed. I thought I was paying for something I had already lost. My stomach turned. His attorney, a calm woman named Denise Calloway, reviewed the documents from my grandmother's box. By the end of the week, she had found more. A trust created by my grandfather had been accessed through forged authorization forms. Payments from Julian had been redirected through a family account. And worst of all, my name had been used in connection with a business loan my parents took out 5 years earlier for a consulting company that barely existed. My name, my credit, my signature, copied from an old design contract I once printed at their house. For years, I thought my parents had only withheld affection. They had withheld identity. There is a difference between being lied to and being erased. A lie changes what you know. Erasure changes what you are allowed to become. I had spent my whole life wondering why I felt like a guest in my own family, while the people raising me were using my name behind closed doors. When the DNA results came back, they confirmed what the documents had already told us. Julian Mercer was my biological father. Martin Bennett was not. I sat in my apartment holding the results while the city moved outside my window like nothing had changed. A bus hissed at the curb. A dog barked across the hall. Someone laughed on the sidewalk below. And I realized the world does not stop when your life breaks open. You just have to decide whether you will step through the crack. Julian asked if I wanted to handle everything privately. Denise recommended sending formal legal notices after the gala to avoid a public scene. That would have been sensible. That would have been clean. But then my mother texted me, "Nora, please do not come to the hotel tomorrow. We cannot risk confusion. Betrayal deserves one night without your resentment." My resentment. Not their fraud. Not their lies. Not the documents locked away for 3 decades. My resentment. I forwarded the text to Denise. Then I called Julian. "I do not want to scream," I said. "I do not want revenge. But I am done protecting their image." He was quiet for a moment. Then he said, "Then we tell the truth where the lie has been performing." The night of the gala, I wore a dark green dress I had bought for a client dinner and never had the courage to wear. Harper came with me. She did not ask if I was sure. She just squeezed my hand in the lobby and said, "Walk like you were invited by the truth." The Whitcomb ballroom glittered. My mother had outdone herself. White roses. Gold menus. A string quartet. Photographers near the entrance. A slideshow of family memories played on the wall, full of Betrayal's graduations, Betrayal's awards, Betrayal standing between my parents like the answer to a prayer. I appeared in 3 photos. In 2 of them, I was half cut off. At the registration table, a young woman searched for my name and frowned. "I am sorry," she said. "I do not see you listed." "I know," I said. Before she could respond, Julian stepped beside me. He had received an invitation from Caleb's father, who knew him from business circles. Denise walked with him, carrying a leather folder. My mother saw us first. Her smile froze. Then my father turned. For 1 second, he looked confused. Then he saw Julian, and all the color drained from his face. Betrayal crossed the room quickly, her satin dress brushing the floor. "What are you doing here?" she whispered. I looked at her. "You told me this night was only for real family." Her jaw tightened. "Nora, not here. That is what I said to myself for 31 years. My mother reached us then, her perfume sharp enough to make my eyes burn. Nora, she said, smiling for the guests nearby. This is not appropriate. Julian looked at her with a sadness that felt heavier than anger. Hello, Evelyn. My mother flinched. Caleb's parents joined us. Then a few of my father's old colleagues. People can always sense when a polished room is about to crack. My father leaned close. You need to leave now. Denise opened the folder. No, she said. She does not. My mother's smile vanished. Denise spoke quietly at first, but the room had already started listening. She identified herself. She stated that she represented Nora Bennett and Julian Mercer. She explained that documents had been discovered showing forged access to a trust created for me, redirected funds, and unauthorized use of my legal identity. My father laughed once. It was a terrible sound. This is absurd, he said. Nora has always had a dramatic imagination. I had heard that line my whole life. Too sensitive. Too dramatic. Too jealous. Too much. Denise placed copies of the documents on a cocktail table. The forged signatures. The bank transfers. The loan forms. The letters. The DNA result. My mother stared at the paper like it might disappear if she refused to blink. Brielle picked up one page. What is this? She asked. No one answered her. So I did. That is a transfer from a trust in my birth name. Nora Marlowe. The account was supposed to be for my education and medical expenses. Mom and Dad used it for the house renovation, your graduate school bills, and part of the down payment on the lake condo. Brielle looked at my parents. Is that true? My mother shook her head too quickly. You do not understand. We did what we had to do for this family. For this family, I repeated. The one I was not real enough to attend? My father's face hardened. You were raised under my roof. And charged for the privilege with money that belonged to me. A few people gasped. Caleb stepped back from Brielle, not far, but enough that she noticed. My mother's eyes filled with tears, but they were not for me. They were for the room. For the witnesses. For the reputation bleeding out across the marble floor. Nora, she said, please. We can discuss this privately. I thought about all the private places where they had hurt me. Private dinners. Private comments. Private decisions. Private signatures. Private lies. No, I said. You used privacy to make sure I was the only one carrying the shame. I am giving it back. Julian stood beside me, steady and silent. For the first time, I did not feel like the extra chair. I felt like someone had finally pulled it out for me. Brielle was crying now. Not loudly. Not in the way my mother wanted people to see. She held the page with both hands and stared at the number near the bottom. My school was paid with this, she asked. My father said, Brielle, sweetheart, do not listen to her. But she turned on him. Was it? He did not answer. That silence did more than any confession could have. The ballroom changed after that. People stepped away from my parents in small, careful movements. Caleb's father asked Denise for her card. My mother sat down as if her knees had failed. My father kept saying this was a misunderstanding, but his voice lost strength each time. I did not stay for the collapse. That surprised people later. They thought I would want to watch every second. They thought revenge meant standing there until the last guest left. But I had not come to destroy them. I had come to stop disappearing. Outside, the air near the lake was cold. Harper wrapped her coat around my shoulders. Julian stood a few feet away, giving me space. For a moment, none of us spoke. Then he said, I am sorry I was not there. I looked at him. The child in me wanted to hand him 31 years of absence and demand that he carry it. But the woman I had become knew the truth was more tangled than that. You were lied to too, I said. He nodded, but his eyes were wet. I would have looked for you, he said. I believed him. That hurt and healed at the same time. The months that followed were not simple. Stories like this never end as cleanly as people want them to. My parents hired attorneys. Denise filed claims. The loan connected to my name was frozen, then investigated. The trust records were reconstructed. My father's old colleagues stopped returning his calls. My mother resigned from 2 charity boards before anyone could ask her to. There were consequences. Not movie consequences. Real ones. Slow ones. Paperwork, court dates, statements, silence from people who used to smile too widely. Brielle called me 3 weeks after the gala. I almost did not answer. When I did, she did not start with excuses. She said, "I am sorry I called myself real family when I did not even know what our family was." That sentence did not fix everything. But it opened a door. We met for coffee in a place neither of us had been before. She looked tired. Smaller somehow. For the first time, I saw how the golden child had also been trapped. She had been handed a crown made of someone else's missing pieces. "I do not know how to be your sister without all of them standing between us," she said. "Neither do I told her. So we started there. Julian introduced me to his brother, his nieces, and a few old friends who remembered my mother. There was no instant perfect family. No magical dinner where everyone knew what to say. Some moments were awkward. Some were quiet. Some made me grieve the life I might have had. But nobody asked me to shrink. That was new. I also changed my work. Julian did not hand me a company, and I did not want one. But he introduced me to 2 clients who needed design systems, and for the first time, I priced my work without apologizing. I rented a brighter apartment with windows that faced the morning sun. I bought a desk that did not wobble. 6 months after the gala, I hosted dinner there. Harper brought wine. Brielle brought flowers and looked nervous until I hugged her. Julian brought an old photograph of himself at 25, standing beside Lake Michigan, looking so much like me that everyone went quiet for a second. We ate pasta from mismatched bowls. We burned the bread. Someone spilled sauce on the rug. Nobody performed. Near the end of the night, I looked around the table and thought about the ballroom, the guest list, the sentence that was meant to break me. Only real family. I used to think family was the people who could claim you. Now I think family is the people who do not need to erase you in order to belong to themselves. Being excluded from that gala felt like the cruelest thing my sister had ever done to me. But it became the door. The door to the box. The door to the truth. The door to the name they had hidden. And the door to a version of myself who no longer waits outside rooms, hoping someone will decide she counts. My past was written by people who needed me quiet. My future is not.